tamale.
Wait a minute, has it started yet?
I just started it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay.
I must have been,
Can you set up a table?
oh gosh, I was already married. But I had watched Mom and Dad make them all the time.
Yeah.
But I didn't learn how to make them until, that I made them myself until after I was married.
Oh, really?
Okay, when were you born?
I was born in Las Animas, Colorado in 1935,
Okay,
March 19th,
How many
1935.
siblings did you have?
There were, my sister passed away when she was 2, and so then there was Marcy, and Johnny, and Buddy, and Pooey, and me. And Estella was her name.
and who are your parents?
Emilio Jeronimo Lopez was his name.
They call him Nick.
You know why?
What was his, no, wait, what was his, what? Wait, say that again.
Emilio, what?
Jeronimo, Jerry.
Geronimo?
Yeah, that's what,
Oh, okay, Geronimo.
yeah.
And
Lopez.
his
And
nickname was Nig.
Yeah, because he had really super curly hair.
Okay.
And so his name was Nig. And so then my mom was born in my dad was born in Las Animas, Colorado. And my mom was born in Raton, New Mexico.
New Mexico. Okay.
And she said when
What was her name, Mom?
her name was Sofia Sandoval Lopez.
Do you know where your grandma was born? Like her parents?
Well, my mom's parents. She said they came from Spain when the monks migrated,
Okay.
and they all migrated to the United States, and they set up there in Raton, New Mexico.
Okay.
And I think that's where her parents.
Do you know what century that was?
She said they came from Spain, but
Okay, but
Like what
like, was that
years?
17 something?
You know when you're
she was born in 16.
Your grandmother?
16 Mom was born in 16.
What?
Well,
That's not possible.
I don't think so.
I
Mom.
mean, 1906.
There you go.
1906. So
So
your mom was
her
born in
your mother's mother was born
I don't know.
in
That's all.
probably 18 something.
I guess because it's written on that obituary thing that I have a mom that's in my closet
We'll
up
have to
there,
look at
in
it.
that cupboard.
Okay, so Grandma came from Spain and Grandpa he was
From
from
Colorado.
Colorado, but we don't know where his parents got how they got to Colorado. It's raining.
That sounds weird.
It's like,
Yeah, I don't know how they got there. I just know that they were all from there. All the relatives.
Okay, I'm gonna have to turn this off because we won't be able to hear. The rain is done. All right, so we were talking about Grandpa. We don't know where.
Well, grandma was born. Her grandma was born in Spain. Your grandma was born in Spain?
I don't know where she was born, but she must have been because that's what Mom said that they all came from. Her parents came from there, she said. And when Rick went to be a lawyer, he studied in Spain and he looked it up over there, he said.
Oh.
And so that's why I wanted to talk to him that time we had the reunion when he was gone.
So they were conquistadors.
I don't know, they probably were.
So how come Grandpa had a limp?
He was in the service. He was in the CBs, and when he came back from the war, he was like that.
So he was injured in the war then.
He must have been.
Which war?
Second World War. I told you about that guy in the church today. He was from the Second World War. I couldn't believe. I was amazed at him. Yeah.
Okay, so you were born in Las Animas,
Yeah. Marcy was, all of us were.
and you went to school in Las Animas.
Yeah.
So what did you study?
Well, when I went to school, we had reading and writing and arithmetic and health and physics and gym and music and chorus and tennis. I think they had tennis. They had, you could take all kinds of stuff. They don't have that in school anymore. Sports. They had women, they had boys and girls sports.
You said that I remember a long time ago you said that the last, like, you went to school up until 8th grade.
No, I didn't. I went
Yeah,
to school
you went to
until I
school
was going to be in the 11th grade, and I quit to get married to your grandpa.
Okay.
And then after we got married, and I had all these 5 kids, I wanted a diploma. So I took adult education classes. And Norman said, you don't need to go to school, just go take a GED class. So I did, and I passed it. I came home with this paper, and I said, but it's not a diploma. I don't want that. I want a diploma. Well, if that's what you want, he said, you're going to have to go to school. So I did. I'd go to school at nighttime until I got my diploma, and then I was just about ready to graduate, and then your daddy decided to move. So we had to move, and when we moved, they wouldn't accept my credits.
Where was this? Where
Okay,
did you
we
get the
lived in
classes?
California.
Yeah,
Yeah, California.
but we lived in Merced when I went to school.
Oh, I've misspoke.
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
remember when you guys moved to California because I know it was Fremont, but then
Okay, well, she'll have to tell
yeah,
what
how did
happened.
you get to
And so
Fremont?
then I went to, from Merced to Fremont, and when I went to Fremont, I went back
Okay,
to school.
well, wait a minute, back up here. When you got married to Dad,
Yeah,
okay, you were living in,
Alaska.
no, you were living in Alaska when you got married to Dad.
Oh, I was living at home with Mom
You
and
were
Dad.
living with your parents,
Yeah.
and how did you meet Dad?
Oh, it's a whole different thing.
Oh my gosh, that
Oh yeah.
she knows all
Do you have
about
enough
how.
space on your
I don't think he does.
Well, I want to
Still
get this,
recording?
I want to get
Is it
this
still
on, yeah,
recording?
yeah.
Okay.
I have 128 gigs on my phone.
Okay.
Never mind.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I met your dad. I was going to be a maid of honor at Betty's wedding.
A maid of honor at a funeral. I guess you could call it that.
It ended up a funeral for her because she got a divorce in the long run. But anyway, I was going to my aunt's from Colorado to California. She lived in Stockton, and
Oh, that's who lived in Stockton.
my
Okay.
Aunt Maggie and
Okay.
Uncle Ray.
Yeah, I knew we used to go to Stockton because when you got sick, you went to Stockton.
Yeah.
But I don't remember who lived in Stockton. I remember going to their house.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Mom put me on the train with this box of chicken and all that stuff that she had made my lunch. Boxed it all up like a shoebox. And I get on the train, and when I get on the train, it's a troop train.
I remember.
It
That's
was
where you
all
met Grandpa.
GIs, and I went like this. I was 18 years old, 17
So
I was
you were
17.
on the way to
No, I was
Stockton.
16.
That's how you, because I pictured like a bus, and I was
No,
like,
it was a
how
train.
what would all these guys be doing on a bus? Like,
It was on a train, and when I got on there, I was scared to death because I didn't see one woman, I didn't see girls, I didn't see nothing but GIs. They were all in uniform, all these GIs sitting in there. And so the train had seats, like you have a seat here and a seat here, but in between there's a panel like this, and it has a mirror on it. So that if you're sitting there, you can look to that mirror and you can see, you know, other places from where you're sitting because of that mirror being there. Well, I went and I got in the train, and there was a guy sitting by the window, and then there was a guy sitting on the end, and they made me sit in the middle. These 3 guys. So the porter puts my ticket up at the top of the thing. Well, when I went to, it got nighttime, and I fell asleep. Well, when I fell asleep, this guy, this GI that was sitting next to the window, he had put his hand underneath my shirt, and that's what woke me up when he touched my skin. Well, it woke me up, and so then I looked at him and I went like that, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Don't you say a word," he said, and I said, "What?" And he said, "Don't you say a word." And I said, "Well," I said, "I was sound asleep and you woke me up. Now I got to go to the bathroom." He said, "You're not going anywhere." And I said, "Oh, yes, I am." And he said, "No, you're not." And I said, "Okay, then I'll just go right here and you can clean up the mess." I told him. And so he said, "Okay, go," he said. So he let me out. And this was, it must have been around midnight, a little after midnight when that happened. And so I went to the bathroom and I closed the door and I sat down in there and I stayed there the whole night long. And then in the
So no one
morning,
else could go to the bathroom.
I kept looking at out the window to see if it was light out. And as soon as it got light out, that's when I got out of there and I went back to where I was, where that guy was, and he wasn't there. So I started to go to the seat, and then Norman grabbed me and he went like that and he said, where did you go? And I said, "What do you mean, where did I go?" And he said, "You were gone the whole night long." I said, "How do you know?" He said, "Because I watched you when you left and you never came back." And he said, "Why didn't you come back?" And I said, "Because that guy over there got fresh with me." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "And I was scared to come back." And so he said, "Well, we'll fix that." So he gets up, goes over to where my ticket is, takes my ticket off and puts it where he was, and there wasn't anybody with him. He had this whole two sides by himself. And so he said, "You're gonna lay down here," he said, "because you didn't get any sleep last night." So when the porter come by, he asked him for a pillow, and he paid him for a pillow and got me a pillow. And then he said, "You could take your coat off and cover up and you can go to sleep there." And so I thought, "I'm not doing that." And he said, "Yeah, you are." He said, "Because you need to sleep." And so I said, "Okay." So I laid down there, and the next thing I know, I heard this commotion, and that guy had come over to where Norman was and where I was, and he said, "What is she doing here? She's supposed to be over there. That is her seat." And Norman said, "That was her seat, but it's not her seat anymore." "Well, her ticket's there." And he said, "No, it's not." He said, "It's over here." And so the guy looked, and then he said, "You want to make something of it," or something like that. And Norman said, "Yeah." So he gets up, and the guy gets up, and they were going to start fighting, and then everybody started yelling, "MPs, MPs, MPs." The MPs were coming through, and so they all sat down, and that was the end of that mess.
How-
So we stayed on the train for 3 days and 3 nights.
That's a long train.
To go from Colorado to California.
Yeah.
Oh, Colorado to California. Okay, I was
Yeah.
trying to
3
figure
days.
out. I was trying to figure out where you
What
were
was it,
coming
a
from.
slow boat? I mean,
Well,
it
they
was
had
like,
to stop everywhere to pick up people.
Jeez.
It's
It
just
was
like a
the
bus.
way to get around.
And so we talked and we visited all the whole time, and he asked me, he said, "And where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to be a maid of honor at my cousin's wedding." And he said, "Well, where's your cousin live?" And I said, "She lives in Stockton." "Well, do you know the address?" And I said, "No, she lives on Jefferson Street." He said, "And what's your aunt's name?" And I said, "Ray." And I said, and that's all I said. So the 3 days come up and he gets off. I get off, and and then he said, "I'll be seeing you." And I thought, "How are you going to be seeing me? You don't even know where I live." So I got off there, So then I went and I was telling my aunt about how this guy had saved me on the train. And I couldn't stop talking about him. And so she kept saying, every night, I kept thinking, I wonder if he's ever going to call me. Because I didn't give him a number or nothing, or a name or anything. All he had was that I was at my aunt's house, and her name was Ray, and she was on Jefferson Street. So he took, for 3 weeks after that, he took another GI, and they would go on each side of the road knocking on each side of the street, knocking on doors, trying to find out if there was a Josephine there, and was their name Ray? And that's all they asked. And so when he came and knocked on the door, I
Stalker!
when he knocked on the door, my aunt went to the door and she said, "Oh my God!" And she started telling him about how I had stopped talking about him. And I thought, "Oh, why don't you be quiet?" And he stayed there, and then he was supposed to ship out, and he kept hiding his orders at the bottom of his duffel bag, so that he kept telling them that they were in Michigan, where his brother, because he was with his brother, and that he would get the orders whenever his brother sent them to him. Well, he kept pacifying them like that until it got to the point that he couldn't do it anymore, and so that was about 45 days later. And then he went to Alaska, and he stayed there, and then he wrote to me every day from Alaska. And then he was there about a year, and then after a year, he called me up and asked me if I'd marry him. And I told him no, and he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because you didn't talk to my mom and dad first." So he says, "Put him on the phone." So he put him on the phone, and I guess they talked to him for a while, and then he came back. I guess he came back a year later, and by that time I was 18, and so then we had made the wedding date and everything, and so while I was in California, I came back to California and I got my dress and my veil and everything there. And then we took it back to Los Animas. Well, when he came back and Mom and Dad and all of them had already concocted up this fishing trip. So he comes in one door and my brothers come in the other door, and my dad, and they said, "Well, you got to get yourself packed up because we're going to the mountains." He said, "I just got here." He said that we're going to the mountains. So they went to the mountains, and they didn't bring him back until a couple of days before the wedding, because they were giving him, Johnny and Buddy and Benny and all of them were giving him the bachelor party thing. And so they brought him
I
back.
want to hear Dad's side, but he's not here for me to ask. What the heck went on?
So then they brought him back, and I didn't see him until we got married.
Wow.
And then we got married and we went to Denver. We picked up 2 hitchhikers on the way to Denver. Yeah, and then we went to Alaska.
Didn't you tell him you weren't going to marry him?
Yeah, well, when he got there, I told him I wasn't going to.
I remember that.
He's the one that told you guys that I told him I wasn't going to marry him. And then he gets there, and I was ironing clothes, and then he said, we'll be getting married pretty soon. And I said, "You know what?" And he said, "What?" I said, "I decided I'm not going to get married." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm not going to get married." I said, "We got to wait." And he said, "No," he said, "I came all this way," he said, "and hitchhiked half of the way," he said, "to get here." He said, "We're getting married." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because if we don't, I'll get you for breach of promise." And I thought, "Oh my God, I wonder what that is." I was so stupid. And I said, "Oh, okay." Because I didn't want to ask you about breach of promise. He always laughed about that. He's told these guys that.
I remember seeing movies where everybody was hitchhiking back then.
Yeah.
I saw Pooey was hitchhiking.
Oh my gosh, Pooey used to hitchhike all the time to see me.
And the old cars, they had those old
Yeah. Yeah, we had old
19
cars. No
1940.
air conditioning, no heaters in them. Oh my gosh. Outhouses.
So you guys were in Denver, and then from Denver, I remember like
We
you
went
guys
to
got
Alaska.
Alaska.
After they got married, they went to Alaska, yeah. He
So
was
you
in the
went to
Air Force. Dad was in the
yeah.
Air Force.
Yeah, so I just didn't remember all of the places because it was quite a few places.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went, well, when we got married on August the 10th, and then a year later, on August the 25th, Jerry was born. But the doctor wouldn't let me have the baby in Alaska because at that time, Alaska was not a state. And he said, He said, with you, the way that my system is, it always was
Yeah.
like that. He said, you've got to be in the States where you can go to a hospital in case of an emergency. He said, and you can't stay here. So I went to Colorado. No, yeah, I went to Colorado, and then after he came back, he got me. And we went to Alabama, and that's where Jerry and Wayne were born.
Let me pause this. Okay, it's on.
Now it's on?
Yeah.
Okay. So we went from Alaska from Alaska to Colorado, and then from Colorado to Montgomery, Alabama, because that's where your grandpa was stationed, in Montgomery, Alabama. And that's where Jerry was born. And then we lived there 5 years, and so then Wayne was born. And so we had Jerry and Wayne in Montgomery, Alabama. They were born.
Well, then how come you kept telling one of us was a rebel and the other one was a?
No, you were both rebels.
Well, you didn't tell us that.
Yeah, you were both.
You're always separating us. One of them was a rebel and the other one was a whatever. It's
No,
not
you
a
were
rebel.
you were both rebels. and then we
don't
went
think so.
That's so good.
from Alaska. We went to Colorado, and then from Colorado, he got sent to Utah, I think, because we would go from.
Utah? I didn't hear about Utah.
Okay,
We
I
lived
was
in
born in
Ogden.
Alabama. We
Yeah.
went from Alabama to Texas.
Oh, that's right, because you went to Catholic school in
Yes,
Texas.
to Texas. Then
Yeah.
to Utah. Then Alabama, Texas,
How long
Utah,
were you-
California.
Oh,
How
yeah.
long were you in each of these places?
5 years, everywhere we went, we
each
were there
place for
5
a-
years.
No, Mom. We
Because
weren't
I
in
thought
every
that-
place for 5 years. I would have been 20 by the time we got to California. Okay, so I was born in Alabama. Left Alabama when I was probably a year old.
Okay.
Went to Texas. We stayed in Texas for about a year.
You
What?
guys went to school in Texas.
I know, for a year, okay? And then we went to Utah, and I was in
if you
Utah for
left
about a
And they
year.
went to school in
Wait,
Montgomery.
let's see. Our math is already
Yes.
wrong because if you left Alabama when you were a baby,
Yes.
you would still have like 4 more years before you went to school.
That's why I said it was
Well,
5
wait a
years.
minute, okay, so I was born in Alabama, went to Texas. So in Texas,
You were there for
we went to parochial school in Texas.
like a preschool or like starting-
Probably kindergarten.
Okay, so then you were in Texas for a little while.
Okay, so for a year, and then I went to Utah. In
Honey, you
Utah,
were in Texas not not any longer than. Pardon me while you choke.
it wasn't long.
Honey, if you were a baby when you moved to Texas and you went to kindergarten, that's 4 years or so.
We stayed 5 years. And you know how we could tell? That's why I wanted those papers of your daddy,
Okay,
because
so
it
how
was right
old was
on
I
there.
when we got to California?
Well, Jerry was,
You'd have been a freshman because you
No,
guys met when you
no.
were freshmen.
no, they weren't that old.
We're talking
They
about
weren't that
Merced.
old. They went to Merced.
Merced first.
And Claire was a newborn baby.
We can figure out what year.
I was
She was
6
born in
years old.
60.
I was 6 years old because I went to first grade in California.
In Merced.
Merced.
Okay.
Okay, so don't you start first grade when you're 6 years old?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
you do.
You do.
Oh,
So
you do.
there's no way I could have lived for 5 years in every state. It's just not
But I
possible.
think the point Mom's trying to make, and I could be wrong, correct me, Mom, if I'm wrong, I'm sure you will, is that from Alabama to Texas, you stayed a little while to get to a kindergarten. You weren't just a baby.
I
and then all of
just
sudden
said a
you were kindergarten.
year.
Honey,
Okay.
so you went to kindergarten when you were 2.
No,
You stayed in Texas for a good while.
stayed in Alabama, okay?
Okay, pardon
So
me.
I don't know.
You know how we would know all the right dates and where we were? Because in that, remember the folder that was on the table over at Marty's that had all your daddy's
No,
things where he went? All
no,
that
I never
stuff?
saw that.
Well, it was at her house.
No, it's still there then.
And so,
Okay, so continue.
so anyway, wherever we lived, we went.
Merced. Let's go to Merced.
And then
Mom.
we went to Ogden, Utah.
Wait, from Merced to Ogden?
No, I just told you. I was born in Alabama. We lived in Alabama, then Texas, then Utah, then California. Okay?
Excuse me,
So-
I missed a
Did you meet a lot of
section.
Mormons?
Huh?
Did you meet a lot of Mormons?
In Utah?
Yeah, yeah, they were. And they would come home from school and they wanted to be Mormons. And I said, why do you want to be Mormons? Well, because those kids, when they go to school, they get play watches, they get this, they get that. And I said, you're not gonna get bribed to go to school. You go to your school, let them go to their school. But you're not gonna go to a Mormon school. But that's how it was in Ogden.
Okay.
And Paul David was born there too. I mean, was with us too. So where in the heck was he? He was born in Lahana.
Where's that? Colorado?
He was born in Lahana, Colorado, and
Colorado.
Bernadette was born in Lahana, and so was in Claire.
All three of them were born in Colorado?
Yeah,
God,
Yeah.
popped them all out.
Well, I remember that we were babies, and Jerry was standing on the crib saying, "Look at me, the big brother that I am."
he was. No, we brought Claire home from the hospital. She was in the bassinet, and Jerry stands at the end of the bassinet, and he's looking at her, and he's saying, "Look at me, big brother that I am of yours," he tells her. And she's just a newborn baby, and here he is standing, because she
Sounds like Jerry.
she had her eyes closed,
Sorry,
and she
Jerry,
was a
sounds like
baby,
you.
newborn baby, and he's telling her, "Look at me, big brother that I am of yours," he tells her. He did do that. Yeah. But then,
I thought that was Bernadette.
no, it was
'Cause
Claire.
Paul- we
Claire
were
was the
all
baby.
babies.
I know, but Claire was the baby.
Okay.
She was the last one, and
Yeah,
that's
I
the
know
one.
she was the last one, but I don't remember.
Yeah, because Mom had the crib
I
in the
don't remember her being there because I know that me and Jerry and Paul were at Grandma's house in Colorado,
Yeah,
but I don't remember Bernadette and Claire being there. I know that one of the girls was born, and I was assuming that it was Bernadette.
no, it was Claire. She was
Well,
the
where was
last one.
Bernadette then?
Bernadette was born she was, where the heck was Bernadette born?
You told me it's 1960 earlier, but I don't know.
That
if
was
that's true.
Claire.
Well, you
Okay,
guys
well,
were
you
in
got the
New
year wrong
Hampshire.
again.
You guys were in New Hampshire for a little
No,
while.
that's
No,
late.
everybody was born and gone and married and everything by the time we went to New Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, we ended up in California when
And
I was in
Merced.
first grade. We finally got to California.
How
So
did you go
then
to school in Texas then?
kindergarten,
Kindergarten? Okay,
Yeah.
first grade in Merced. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
He's got pictures of him in his
I
uniform.
remember,
In
I
kindergarten.
remember kindergarten or first grade in Merced because I was excited that I was getting a new pair of pants. Because I had never had a new pair of pants before.
I was had me
And
dance.
it was like, wow, I got a new pair of pants. And I was just really excited that I had, and I was going to school. And I remember that. So,
It's funny the things I remember.
Yeah. It was few.
Merced was good. So we were in Merced for 5 years. And then we moved to Fremont.
So,
That you guys were all teenagers when we moved to
so you
Fremont.
were 11 when you moved to Fremont then?
I was in 7th grade, whatever old you are in 7th grade.
You said 5 years,
7.
and you were in kindergarten.
No, I said first grade.
So, oh, I see, so
Yeah,
that's
count,
5,
add.
so 11. You were
Yes.
11 when you
Okay.
moved? I'm asking.
I don't know. Do the math.
Well, if you're 11, you're in 5th grade. And didn't you move to Fremont when you were in junior high?
7th grade.
So you've got a few more years to account for, is what I'm saying.
I know that
First grade
I know
to-
that we were in Merced for 5 years.
Okay,
I know that.
Then we went to Fremont.
And then we moved to Fremont.
I'm just puzzled with the other
And they
several
were all
years.
teenagers in Fremont.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So you guys, that's how you ended up in Fremont.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That I have wondered for a while, and I don't know why I never thought to ask.
Yep, that's where we ended up in Fremont.
I was like Colorado to Fremont, but then there's Alabama somewhere in there, and I didn't even know about Utah until now. I seriously didn't even know Utah or Texas was in there. I just
Yeah.
thought
Yeah,
there
but
was.
all those places were very short periods of time.
They were, well,
Yeah.
his tour
So
of duty, if it
I
was.
don't even remember very much about any of them. Okay, I remember in Alabama, sitting underneath a swing set with a tricycle, putting dirt on it and spinning the front wheel. Okay? And I remember that because I saw myself in a movie doing
Oh my
it.
God, that's
Okay,
funny.
that was in Alabama. Then we moved to Texas, and I remember playing with horny toads in the back, because our yard was the desert.
Yeah.
So, because we lived in San Antonio.
No, we lived in San Angelo.
Okay, well, anyway, it was Texas, desert.
And they had this great big, you know those great big wheels that they have on the, not an 18-wheeler, but big wheels.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And that was their sand pile. And
We used to
Norman
get inside
came,
that.
Empire.
We
Norman
used to get
came,
inside that tire, and then they would roll the tire.
and he would, it was full of sand, that big tire. And they had little sand buckets. And Norman said, "Where are the boys?" And I said, "They're out there in the yard playing with the rocks. They've been carrying rocks in that bucket all day." Well, I didn't know they were horny toads. They were horny toads in those buckets. That's when they brought those. They went out there, and Norman was in cahoots with them, and he told them that they could bring them and put them in that shoebox. He gave them an old shoebox. They brought him in the bedroom, and then the damn thing hatched.
So Texas, we were still pretty young.
They were little.
We weren't very old. And then when we moved to Merced, now we were getting to be like 5, 6 years old, me and Jerry. And we started playing baseball.
No, when you were in Merced, Jerry, that was when Jerry was 14
Middle school.
by that time.
But at the end, by the time we moved out of Merced, he wasn't that old when we got there.
No, that's right. Then he got involved in sports.
We started playing Little League
Yeah.
in Merced. And Dad was a member of the golf course, the country club.
Yeah,
And he used to take us and drop us off, and me and Jerry would play golf. Well, Dad was working, and he'd come over, pick us up after work, and take us home. So those are the things I remember about Merced. And then when we moved to Fremont,
that's when we went to Lake Elizabeth in the boat, in the
no, we didn't
sailboat.
go to
Where was that at?
a sailboat.
Yeah,
Well, I did have sailing class.
yeah. You guys used to go sailing in the sailboat, but I thought that was
That was a
the
sailing
Lake
class.
Elizabeth.
Well, yeah, I had a sailing class at Lake Elizabeth, but in Fremont, in 7th grade, I continued to play in the band,
Yeah,
and I remember going to the La Honda Music Camp, where I met Mick Gillette and a couple of other members of Tower Power
yeah.
in our jazz band, and so it was music and sports, wrestling, high school, all that stuff in Fremont. And then when I graduated, I went in the Army. So
You played football too. Don't
yeah,
you
no, I
remember?
did. I said sports, music and sports.
Yeah.
So, but that's me. We're talking about you now. So, you went from Alaska to Alabama to Texas to Utah to California.
New Hampshire.
You saw us graduate. Me and Jerry and Paul graduate from high school. Bernadette and Claire had not graduated yet, and Dad was tired of working for Wolf and Company, or he was getting burnt out from working at Wolf and Company, and decided that he wanted to move back to New Hampshire.
Okay, so that's what
Okay.
it was. But I have another question before you go on. What was it like for you moving moving that much?
I
There's
loved
so
it.
many different places.
I just
what
loved
was
it.
your thought?
He used to call me up and he'd say, "I got my orders, we gotta be going and we have 2 weeks to pack." He said, "So I'll get some boxes home," and he said, "You start getting the stuff together." And I used to just get it together and pack up, and then we'd be ready to roll.
Is that what did you know you were getting into that when you Well, you knew. I mean, you knew he was in the Air Force. And
Well, yeah, and I knew that you were gonna travel around,
yeah.
but that was really fun times with the kids, because they got to go to different places and meet different people, and,
Was it
Be on the Howdy Doody show.
yeah.
was it hard, like getting to know new neighborhoods, or like getting to know?
No,
like,
because they were all GIs, all the wives were the
Oh,
same, and
yeah.
we were all in the same boat. Everybody
it's
had
like-
the same, you know.
Then a new group of girlfriends like was it like that, or like you met new?
We didn't have that. I never had trouble meeting friends where we lived, or neighbors and stuff. And then what we would do is everybody had little kids. So when the mother wanted to go get her hair cut, or she wanted to go to the dentist, or she wanted to go get something, she'd call up and she'd say, "Can you watch my kids?" I'd tell her, "Yeah, bring them over." And then when I had to do the same thing, I'd take them over there. And
Yeah.
these kids went all over the place. But you can't do that nowadays. You can't do that. It's not like it used to be. Then we never locked doors or anything. When I was a kid, people used to leave their doors open. They used to leave the keys in the door. They used to leave the keys in the car. I mean,
It was a different time.
I know it was a great time, because we grew up as when I was little, and we grew up. We would go. They had street lights, and all the streets weren't paved, and so at nighttime, we would all, after we all had our homework done and all our dishes and everything done, we could go out to play. So all of us kids would go out on the street and play, kick the can or hide and seek or hot and cold or whatever.
Yeah.
And we would stay out there until we'd hear Daddy whistling, and then we'd come home. Everybody's father had a whistle, and they'd whistle and they'd come home. Just like Norman did with them. He used to whistle and they used to come. We never called him or yelled at him. They just
Yeah,
whistled.
we could hear him a mile away.
Yeah. Well, that's how we grew up too.
Yeah.
I'd be a block away and I could hear him whistle.
Yeah.
You better get your ass home when you heard that whistle.
Yep. That's how we got him home. If somebody didn't come home, then he had to go look for them to find out what, where they were, what they were doing. But most of the time they came home.
Okay, so you end up in New Hampshire.
And we lived there 28
with,
years.
With Bernadette and Claire.
Yeah. And Claire graduated from New Hampshire, but Marty came and got Bernadette.
Yeah,
And then Pooey died, and I went to LA to
yep.
Pooey's funeral. While I was gone, Marty and Bernadette went and got married.
So did Bernadette ever graduate?
I don't know. I don't know if she ever
I think she did. I think she went back and got her GED.
Bernadette.
Oh, Bernadette. Yeah. I think she did. I think she said that she got her GED.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
To me, that wasn't graduating. I wanted a diploma, and that's what I got. So when your daddy died, everybody was reading my diploma. Oh, look, she graduated from Irvington in 1969. I said, yeah. But
That's a huge commitment to see that you were committed to follow and to achieve that. Like through moving and through
Okay, so we got to Fremont when I was 12, because we got there in '67. I was born in '55, so '67 makes me 12. So I was 12 years old when we got to
That
Fremont.
makes more sense.
to Fremont.
Okay.
all I know is that all 5 of them were teenagers at one time in Fremont.
and you were wanting to pull your hair out.
No,
No.
no.
Fremont was
That was
kind
the
of
best
weird.
times when they were all teenagers.
I remember that when we first got there, we'd get up in the morning and it would be foggy,
Oh gosh.
the
I miss
overcast.
California
I
fog.
mean,
That's
you'd get up and it would be just completely fog,
Socked in.
and it was like, wow, what is this stuff in the air, you know?
It was
And
cold.
then by mid-afternoon, it'd be all gone.
Sometimes 10 in the morning it's gone, depending
Yeah.
on the day.
So to me, that was
that
that was
ocean air conditioning, man.
one of the first things that I noticed when we moved to Fremont was the climate.
Fog.
And I mean, it was so
It's
close to
very
the
temperate.
ocean, that you could almost smell the bay.
Ocean air.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you could smell the bay.
Yeah.
Some days.
Fremont.
Other days it was Milpitas.
Right.
Yeah.
Cause they had marshlands in Milpitas, and it always smelled like
No,
sewage because the
it was
marshes.
the sewer.
Okay, that too. But there were marshes and salt flats and all these funky aromas going on
In the bay.
in the bay.
What are you doing? Yeah, it's still running.
You gotta hit it big.
No, that's just,
I'm just thinking, like, we gotta pull out pictures.
Honey, there's a whole, oh, you have no idea.
I've got them. I told
Yeah,
you
we
that
can.
you need to go
Christina,
through there.
Michelle, it's time. You gotta pick out what you want.
Oh god, no.
It's
You
You
don't,
brought
Not
it
that
up.
time yet. No, I was thinking if we have them electronic, then we can just like.
well, that's
All
what
right,
I'm
let's-
saying. You
Yeah.
can
All right, we're rolling.
I was really just wanting to know what it was like raising 5 kids, moving around. Like, what did your life feel like when you were? I mean, like we talk about like what daily life is like now. Like, what was it like when you were raising your kids and?
when I was raising these kids, because everybody was in the service, everybody's kids played all together and did all that stuff. But
She about lost her mind.
when they were all little, all 5 of them in Merced, one day I had a Ringo type washing machine. This is just
What's coming in?
this just is an example. I had a Ringo type washing machine. I was doing the laundry, and all these kids were out there playing. And I was babysitting like 7 besides these 5.
Oh my gosh.
And I was doing the laundry, and one of them went in the kitchen and put a stool up there, turned the sink on, and I didn't know that the sink was on, that they had the things in there, and then it was about time for the people to come and get all their kids, so they took them home. But all these kids were still raising hell in the house. And so I was trying to get the sink done, and I was trying to get this washing machine, push the clothes, and I had long hair, longer than yours, and I got it caught in the wringer type of the damn washing machine, and my head was going towards the thing, and then I remembered you had to hit the thing on top to release the rollers so that I could get my head out of there.
Oh my.
And so they were running in and out and in and out, and I was trying to get all this done, mopping up the water and all that stuff, and then I thought, oh, screw it. So I just left everything just like it was, and I sat on the floor. I'll never forget that. I went and sat on the floor, and because I don't drink, Norman had a bottle of vodka or something in a cup that him and Bill used to drink their things.
Like, this is my day.
And I got that bottle and I sat in the floor of that register, because that's how the houses were, they had registers. And I sat on the bottom of that register on the floor, and these kids were just, the girls and the boys, they were just running, and the door was open, flies everywhere and everything. And I was sitting there drinking out of this bottle, because I thought, if I touch any of them, I'm gonna hurt them, so I'm just gonna sit here. So I sat there, and then Norman comes home. It must have been about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and he walks in, and he couldn't believe the house, what it looked like. He said he'd never seen it like that. And he said, and he looked at me, and he said, and I was holding that bottle, and he said, what's going on? And he said, I didn't do anything. So he said he went like this to me, and he said, I gotta get you to bed. So then he started cleaning up everything and got all the kids in the bathtub and gave them all a bath and put the pajamas on and fed them and put them to bed. And then the next morning he's telling me, how do you feel? And I said, I don't feel anything. But yeah, you had to, when you had all 5 of them and they'd got in trouble, this one went out in the back and he had this bullet cap.
Oh, gee.
That
It
had-
wasn't a bullet, Mom, it was a shotgun shell.
Well, whatever the hell it was, and he got the hammer or rock or something and he hit it. And then I heard this shot, and then Jerry and him come in there, and Jerry's all, just all excited because he was real hyper. And then I said, what's happened? And he said, oh, nothing much. And Wayne's like this with his hand behind his back. And I said, what do you got? And he said, nothing. And I said, let me see. He almost blew his finger off. I said, what were you doing?
You still have a scar from
I
that?
think I do.
Yeah,
Oh
and
my
he said, I said,
Okay,
it's,
it would have been the one that I was there it is.
and I said,
Right there. I was holding
Good
I was
Lord,
holding the
Wayne.
cap. I was holding the cap with one hand and the nail on the top of the cap.
oh, I didn't know you had a nail.
Well, you had to hit the
Oh
pin
my
in the
God.
middle. So I'm holding the cap with one hand with the nail,
crap.
and I hit it with a hammer, and the thing blew up, and it shot past my ear. I could hear it when it blew up. It went right past my ear, but I couldn't hear anything after that because it was like it was so loud that I couldn't hear anything. But I was lucky that thing didn't hit me in the head.
It would have killed him.
It would have probably done some damage because it was an empty shell, but it was just the primer. It was the cap at the little end of it. You know, with the.
How in the world did you find that?
It was in the yard, I guess.
It was in that crap that Bill was putting in there to fill up that slate flower bed that he
It was
made.
in the yard. I
And
found
Bill, who's Bill?
Manasco, did you know Bill
I
Manasco?
know the name.
it. She never met him.
So
I don't know
anyway,
the person.
and then they had this rabbit, and
Wayne had a rabbit?
they all did. It was all 5 of them's rabbit, and it was outside. It was a little white rabbit, and they played with it and everything. And then the rabbit, they went to school and they came back. A dog had eaten their rabbit,
Aww.
but then they had this mouse.
Did they not feed the dog enough?
We didn't. It wasn't our dog. It was some.
Oh my Lord.
We didn't have a dog, but they had this little white mouse. All
We
of
don't
them.
have to do the mouse story. I mean, you can, jeez.
No, thank you. I've got water right here. I'm good. Thank you, honey.
Yeah, well, she wanted to know what I went through with you guys. That was just some of the stuff.
I just remember the story about you with the broom handle with Jerry and
Oh,
under the
Jerry,
bed.
Jerry had stood
Where
up.
was that? Was that in Merced?
Yeah, he was 14, and he said something to me, and I told him that he couldn't, that he wasn't allowed to talk back to me because I was the parent and he was the child, and he was not going to talk to me like that. And so then I went to hit him with my shoe because I took my slipper off. And I was going to hit him with my slipper, and he took off and went under the bed. Well, I tried to reach him with the shoe, and I couldn't, so I got a broom handle. The broom, and I went like this with the broom handle trying to get him out of there, and I never could get him out of there. But when Norman came home, he finally got out of there, and he was the star in the basketball team for 14 years old at school. And he went to school and he had all those bruises on him. Well, they called me into the office and they wanted to know what he had done, and I told him that he was just being unruly, and that I was trying to get him out from under the bed, and I was hitting him with that broom handle trying to get him out of there. But I didn't beat him with the broom handle. I was trying to get him out from under the bed. and so then the counselor said, well, I think that he has too much energy, and we're going to have to get him enrolled in a sports program, and that's what really got him going. He got in sports, and then I didn't have any more trouble with him. But oh my gosh, when they were little, I thought I was going to be in prison because I'd have killed them all or something.
Yeah, we had multiple instances where things could have gone bad, but
Yeah.
they didn't. We got lucky, and no one got hurt. And
Yeah, he had a temper, and a real temper.
He still does. Sorry, Jerry. True.
But he's nothing compared to what he was when he was little.
That's probably true.
He reminded me of Daniel when Daniel was growing up with all that energy. Well, that's how Jerry was, just like
But
that.
That's what it's always sounds like.
Daniel wasn't angry though, generally.
Well, Jerry wasn't angry either. He just would get into mischief, and you know how kids are. Well, that's how he was. But now he's making bullets for friends. You should see his setup that he's got. I couldn't believe it. He has these vice things that are standing up like this.
just like Matthew.
He's got like about 6 or 7 of those things, and he's got a whole wall bigger than this of the whole garage of boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff to make stuff with. I never seen anything like it. And there's nothing in there that you don't have to go to the store to get anything. He's got it there. Doesn't matter what he had this, he was sharpening knives. And I looked at him and I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm sharpening knives. He had some kind of a machine. And he's sitting there just sharpening knives. I told him, I don't want to cut with those knives.
Well, because he hunts, and he probably uses them to skin.
To what?
Skin. He hunts.
Yeah, but he said that he doesn't make all those bullets for himself. He makes some he's got
Well, we
orders
were
for his
talking about
friends.
knives.
Well, the knives.
So,
No, these were kitchen knives that he was sharpening.
well, he uses those too.
Yeah. Then with that machine. Then he's got all these big things for beer. Makes yours look like a midget.
That's all I need. That's
Good
all I
gravy.
need.
He's got these things.
Yeah.
They're big like this. And he's
He
got
has regular size kegs that he makes
Big.
beer.
Oh, yeah? Oh, wow.
he's got big stuff that he makes
That's a
beer.
good-
5 gallon kegs.
No kidding.
Oh, they're bigger than that, Wayne. They gotta be, because they're huge. They're
It's a kegger at Hoffman's house.
they're, see how long that door is?
Yeah,
That's how long
I
was,
know, that's a 5 gallon keg.
that's 5 gallons?
Or, no,
Can't be, because a 5 gallon tank was that water that you drank when you had the thing there. It's bigger than that.
how big is a standard keg, 20 gallons?
Yeah.
Okay, 20 gallons.
Yeah,
It's
well,
a-
that makes more
It's a regular
sense.
standard keg, you know, it's,
Okay, oh yeah, the standard case. Is it 20?
I thought it was
That's
5.
me.
I don't think it's not. Maybe it's not that. No, it's not that big. I think
Google,
I've seen 11, I've seen
Google's your
11
friend,
gallon
Google
ones.
it.
Whatever it is, anyway, he's got all that crap in there.
But he's made all of his brewing equipment.
Yeah, that's all on the video.
He's made his own chiller and made his own brew pot. He went to a bar and got a keg that they were throwing out and had the top cut off of it. He uses that for his brew pot. And he does all grain, so he makes really good beer. But his process is like grueling.
I was just thinking about that chef movie again.
Oh, I'm into that.
All right, I think